Domestic violence is a widespread problem in the United States. But many persons don't realize that domestic violence is an equal opportunity problem. Women and men are equally likely to be abusers. Unfortunately, the stories of male victims of partner abuse are seldom told.
My name is Queen Fee. My program is Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags. And the initiative was to talk both to women and men, okay? Because both, I believe, can be victims and or abusers of domestic violence. Today we hosted our 5th annual Men Hurt Too panel. The focus of that panel was, of course, to hear the stories of men that are victims of domestic violence, starting from childhood, maybe some adolescent, and then them carrying that learned behavior into their own adult relationships.
5th annual Men Hurt Too panel, and the purpose of this panel is to share light as it pertains to men that are victims of domestic violence.
And then, of course, you have the United States who train their police officers through the Violence Against Women Act, okay? So the men are not included in that at all, okay? We need to get the men included in this conversation and included to be covered under the law, because right now they're not. So men have to have their own evidence, their own text messages, their own pictures to present, hey, I'm the victim here, as opposed to the abuser.
And the reason why I wanted to take some of the focus and put it on men is because I abuse men in relationships. So I know that it happens.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Herbert Ritchie. In 2008, that's when my life just spiraled into a roller coaster that I couldn't get off. I look back, I started a lot of things. I was a law enforcement officer, get ready to make sergeant, but this young lady, I don't know what she had on me, but she had it on me. 3 of my cars she stole. She the only one could find them. Metropolitan Police couldn't even find them. She can ride up down Southern Avenue, your car going way, and I'm going another way. Lo and behold, in 2008, my wife told me, she said, I know you got her pregnant, but you can come back home. So I decided I'm gonna break it off. She called me and told me, look, I got all your uniforms. I went to the cleaners and I got all your uniforms. So you gotta come to my house. My wife said, go to her house, give her a key, and come on back home. Well, I didn't make it back home. She snatched her key. She took my service weapon and put it to my head. She threw bleach, ammonia, anything she can throw on me, she threw it. When I did break loose, and when she put that gun in my head, I dropped to my knees. I said, let me pray before you kill me, because that's the way it was going. Her other 2 daughters jumped down the steps, and she was pregnant with my daughter at the time. And I said, Lord, give me the strength, because she hit me one more time. I don't give a damn. I'm going to put her through this wall, because I had enough. So I broke loose, went outside, and when I go outside, going down Southern Avenue, coming up Southern Avenue, my colleagues was at the door. And she went inside. She said, he hit me. He spit on me. And I'm just looking at her. I'm like, I called the police. And Brown was my officer. He was one of the officers that used to work side by side with me. He said, Richie, go ahead and go get in your car. But by the time I tried to go get in my car, it was a sergeant who just got promoted to 6D. He was like, nah, man, we're gonna lock you up. And I'm like, lock me up for what? What'd I do? Here's my badge. Here's my ID. I'm an officer just like you. He said, no, you're not. And I'm like, what do you mean, no, I'm not? I'm still an officer. No, you're not. He took my weapon. He took my badge. He took my ID. And he locked me up. 22 years I was on the force. And I lost everything. Car, house, family. I lost everything. So now, I'm still going through domestic violence because I'm still trying to fight to see my daughter. But you know what? I pray about it and I let it go. But I'm going to tell all young men in here, when you have a baby, it's not the woman's baby, it's both of y'all baby, until the city or the state tell you who has custody. That's my story, and there it is.
My name is Clarence Miles. I'm the Executive Director of United Now Youth here in Washington, D.C. I'm here because we need to get that information out about domestic violence with the males, because a lot of times we're not even paying much attention to how, let me put it this way. When I was younger, I had a woman that I was going with. She was 18 years older than me. I was about 14 or 15 years old. I stayed in that relationship for almost like 10 years. I broke away from that relationship at the age of 25 because when I looked around from 16 to 17, 18 years old, I was with this woman, and at the end of the day, when we get finished hustling on the street, I couldn't go out in the community to hang out with my friends and my buddy from the community that I lived in. I had to sit on the front. And I thought at the time when that was happening, it was like, I've been out all day, I needed to sit down and rest, but what I did not know, that she was manipulating me by having me to become compliant to the things that she wanted. I could never do what I wanted. You know, it got to the thing that one day I was in the house and I wanted to go out, and we was in there talking to some friends of mine, and she hauled off and slapped me. And when she slapped me, I was so startled, it wasn't nothing I could do. And I stayed in that relationship for a long time. And at that time, I'm thinking that was love. What I found out is that this woman had had me trapped because of a feeling of a relationship, more sexual. Because I'm thinking that she's giving me sex, I'm thinking that she's loving me. What I found out, she was only abusing me. And I just found that out through the many years of me getting myself together. You know, and through that, I had another young lady that I was going with probably at the same time that was my age. And I remember one day, I told her I was going somewhere, and I ended up with the lady, and I got out the car, then the young lady, she pulled up and put the pistol in my face and pulled the trigger. And I'm thinking that just because I'm thinking that she really loved me, but what it was is that I found out a lot of time when they have control or trying to control you and you're not doing what they want you to do, then they react in a way that they don't, if they can't have you, they don't want nobody else to have you.
I am the creator of the DMV movement. If you heard that on the radio, DMV, I started that back in 2003 with the hip hop scene. So I'm very well known in the hip hop scene. I want to talk to you about a little bit about me. You know, growing up in D.C., I witnessed my mother being abused physically and mentally. And the worst thing for me was being in the next room and not being able to do nothing for my mother. Hearing her head being banged up against the wall, things like that, you know. So, you know, I was angry because my father was doing life for murder. So he wasn't there to save me. He wasn't there to save my brother. And I grew up angry. And me and this young lady, we stayed together for 5 years, right? And we had a son. And so we argued every day. When I tell you every day, I used to turn my phone off. And when I turned my phone back on, I got 100 text messages. All of them talking about, you ain't never gonna be nothing. That's why your father a murderer and he a drug addict, your mother a drug addict. And by the way, my mother been clean for 26 years. So, you know, to that. And so as when I came home from that charge, of course I had no job. Of course, you know, I'm trying to get myself back together. And she would just say these things every day, and it started to weigh on me every day. Man, why she gotta keep saying this? Why she gotta text me what I'm not, what I'm never gonna be, I'm not this, I'm not that. So I decided to leave the relationship, right? And when I left the relationship, that was on Christmas, it was like, I think a day before Christmas, she went off. She scratched me in the face. When I went to court, the prosecutor didn't even look at me. All she had was a stack, and these were a stack of cases. She ain't cared nothing about them. All she cared about was winning the case. You know, so whatever I was or however I was for the past few years, ain't matter. It didn't matter at all. All she knew, I was guilty.
Pass it to Brother Tyreek so he can chime into that. Keep it short, please.
Want to say is, it's not necessarily a thing of us as color, because I know a lot of men, period, based on whatever race, color, or whatever you may want to be. It's more of a thing of the court system is set up somewhat in a way of more leniency towards the woman.
Right.
I mean, in family court, and definitely in family court, it's more so prevalent to where it's more leniency given towards the woman with regards of, say, for example, a lot of us that have dealt with custody issues, the custody is automatically given to the woman. So that's why I became a fatherhood facilitator, so I can work, you know, more so intently and more closely with the legislation with regards to, you know, family court issues, with even the judges themselves, because a lot of times we find ourselves speaking to the judges and letting it be known that a lot of times the biases that's given in the courtroom, you know, a lot of the men, you know, we've all shared that a lot of things were just simply said in court, was simply said to a judge or to a police officer, and immediately it's just believed. But I find a lot of us as men, we have to go in there, we have to prove without a questionable doubt that it's not.
You do.
And that's where the problem comes in at.
You do. The purpose of the monologue is to give you a visual picture of what happens in domestic violence relationships, okay? To give you a visual picture of what happens in domestic violence relationships. So the monologues are real victims, real abusers telling a small portion of their story up here, included with where they are today. So brokenness to boldness. So you'll see the brokenness first, and then we'll go into the boldness, okay?
Queen Afi, tap, tap, click. I've been controlling even before he came into the picture. By the time I met him, he was victim number 8. I was exercising my control with him from day one. But my controlling, isolation, verbal abuse, threatening violence, and the breaking and the striking of my victims' objects were at an all-time high. Him and I would fight, but on this winter night, it was different. I whispered to myself while he slept next to me, You like to disobey, do you?
Let me guess. You think I was crying because of the pain that I caused? You think inside she must be dying from being broken and lost? Yes, this is her reclining from solid to soft, but to keep it real, I was crying because that gun didn't go off. See, I was tapping on his head for him to open his eyes, so once he reaches low from his high, I had a chilling surprise death. Yes, I wanted him dead, so I put that lead to his head, and ooh, he was lucky I was busting blanks instead. How did I get to this point of cold hardness and discernment? How did I allow myself become so motionless and determined to kill my son's father at the drop of a dime? But understand, folks, it was learned behavior over a matter of time. It seemed around 14 and 15. I had aggressive tendencies. It was to kill or be killed demeanor. It was something that lived with me. And this was the family rule. We was all the same. We all had that reputation of being off the chain. No one could tap into our kindness and veil us from our violence. Circumstances confined us, restricting us from open minds to see. My son's father, shit, he was no sucker. We go toe to toe, blow for blow, just to see which one was tougher. And that night, that fight sparked the flame that would ignite my downward spiral to my lowest point, where I woke up to blue lights at one night in Congress Heights. I took a ride to the east side, drunk as hell, swerving lanes in my zone on the bus ride in my high. I thought I must have been on a bus ride or a school trip in my cool whip. Let me get one more, no wait, 2 sips of this liquor till I'm numb. I cannot feel my lips. The tapping on the window from the police's gun, accompanied by blue lights as bright as the sun, woke me up to a sight that shocked me. I was stunned because in the backseat of my car was my son. I was done. 4 to 5 charges, reckless endangerment. At that moment, my transitioning moment hit. Because, see, I tried to kill my son's father, and I felt no remorse. I played the victim. It's his fault my life was off course. Now, I almost killed my son. Who do I have left to blame? And from that moment moving forward, I knew something had to change, and that was education. So I tapped into my knowledge. I hit the books. Got my BA in criminal justice. Woo, I was hooked. Got my MA in mental health. That's all it took to realize that my crazy wasn't as crazy as it looked. Was able to connect the dots. Was able to put terminology to my issues and connect the dots. Was able to work through my issues, but that's not where it stops. Discover that there's hundreds, thousands, millions just like me suffocate from domestic violence and need to breathe. Black face, black story, white education. I had a voice to tap into my community and let them know they have a choice. It's not you. It's not your fault. Domestic violence is learned behavior, and you shouldn't depend on self-medication to be your savior. And PTSD, shoot, that's an issue that is major. And depending on pharmaceuticals is making a huge wager. And the main point that I try to drive is domestic violence wears many tags. Oh, so many that I can literally count them off on one hand. Financial, verbal, sexual, emotional, physical, and even in some cases it can be spiritual. And it's not just women. Men hurt too. See, I used to take but also inflict the abuse. But once I woke up, cut out all the nonsense, held myself accountable, tapped into my consciousness, searched for all the answers, discovered where the knowledge is. It was the day that I dedicated my life to fighting the war against all domestic violences. Thank y'all.
This is way beyond awareness. We need education behind what we're going through. We need the language and the statistics to know what we're going through. It's far beyond a pamphlet. Because if I give you the pamphlet, you ain't gonna call. Who gonna call me? You lying. Anyway, thank y'all for coming out. I still press my way with the 4th panel, so I'm happy to come back again for the 5th year and bring this panel back again to the community, because men hurt too. It is the other side of domestic violence.
Yes, it's very important. We need it in the community because there's a lot of domestic violence towards men and women. A lot of young men don't come out with it. A lot of young men let things go because they're trying to be men when they really still young men. They don't know how to deal with the situation, so they tend to let the woman abuse them, put her hands on them and everything else. And with that being said, you know, it's a lot of other things. There's verbal abuse. So a young man might sit there and let a woman curse him out, say a lot of foul things towards him. But when she put her hands on him, he's afraid to respond because he's afraid that he's going to be insulted or arrested. This is not my first time coming to one of her events. I come because I look to get more information. I look to hear other people's stories. And I like to learn more about the different ways of domestic violence, because I didn't know there was, like she mentioned, there was financial abuse, you know, and there's emotional abuse. A lot of that emotional abuse, it comes from within. Somebody's been abused and now you're dealing with them and you don't know what their background was, whether they was abused. So they tend to take it out on you and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with your friend or your mate. So it's very important that we have these type of sessions, especially in the African American community.
I can identify with everything that the men talked about. But one thing that I've learned is that I have to come, first of all, I work in the mental health field. And now that mental health is not such a stigma anymore, it's about becoming more aware of what my trauma is, my anger issues, not letting that anger turn into bitterness, that bitterness turn into rage, which can lead to murder. So it's about just self-awareness and knowing where I am and knowing what my trauma is and getting healing. And if I run into somebody that's triggering any of those things, that's a sign that I need to either share with them that this is not the best relationship and keep on finding out what I need to find out about myself. Me personally, since I've grown up around a lot of domestic violence, I can't be the perpetrator. And so, but to actually hear men come out and share, you know, their experience as victims in domestic violence is very, very courageous and very helpful. Like I said, I think this dialogue is needed. And this is where the healing is going to start and where the change is going to start.
This is Young Motive, and I have a topic today that's often overlooked. Domestic violence. Domestic violence wears many tags. So Queen Afia, if you're listening, check it out. Domestic violence, it has to stop. The kids are crying, it's coming down like raindrops. It's a behavior we can't condone, it's breaking up our